to fill this time. But let's see. I'm still waiting for the countdown. There we go. We should be safe. Hello, everyone. I am your host, Eric Smith, and we're going to jump right into my favorite horror with author of such things as The Possession of Natalie Glasgow. And we'll jump to Queen of Teeth, Hailey Piper.
Hello. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you for being here. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Oh, not too bad. I was going to say enjoying this cold weather, but I'm not really enjoying it.
Yeah, I feel you.
Oh, not a fan. All right. So I showed a couple of your books, but I do have a little stack here to show folks. I actually just read this one earlier this week. Enjoyed that very much.
Thank you.
We've got your Rewind or Die, Penny Rose the Cannibal King, and very happy to have the hardcover. Love, love, love the cover of this one.
Thank you. There's only a few of those.
And a couple of anthologies that you're in. We've got this one, which I actually just had during an interview yesterday. I had to show that one off, and I've got this one. That's all I have at the moment. But I have read all the novellas. Is Queen of Teeth considered novella, or is that novel length?
It's a novel. It's about 59,000 words. So.
Okay, great. Well, I had a question about Queen of Teeth.
Sure.
When I did my review, I left something out because I thought some people might consider it a spoiler. But I think you mentioned it on Instagram or Twitter or something, and that was I don't remember exactly how you put it. Maybe a touch of venom.
Yeah.
So are you a fan of that character, of the character Venom?
Not super much, just because I haven't really I think the last time I read a Venom comic was I don't know, 25 years ago.
Wow.
So yeah, I haven't seen the new movies, but I get the gist of them. And when I mentioned the Venom thing, that's an easier way for people to understand what goes on with Yaya and Magenta.
Yeah, and it came to mind when I was reading it. Like I said, I just didn't know if that was the type of thing that I should mention in a review.
I don't think talking about Magenta is a spoiler. Personally.
Well, I just the relationship between them.
Mm.
I wasn't sure. I never know. Because I'm not a professional reviewer. And people have different ideas of what spoilers are.
Well, unfortunately, some people kind of think if they know anything about a thing, then that's a spoiler. And I just you can't spend your life stressing about that stuff too much.
It's funny. I have a sister, and I actually just mentioned this in the interview I did yesterday. I mentioned a character in a TV show, and she yelled at me for spoiling it. I said, all I did was mention a name. She's like, yeah, but now I know there's going to be someone with that name in the show. I said, that's a little extreme.
I think it's a bit extreme. I mentioned the runtime of a movie, and somebody said that was a spoiler.
That's crazy.
I think it's a bit much.
Now, I was surprised when I read this, and this is actually the first thing of yours that I had read.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't realize that would you call it an alternate Earth, alternate timeline that it takes place in?
It's a parallel. I mean, everything's pretty much the same up until 1988, I think, and that's where things start to differ.
Yeah, I was a little surprised, but I going in just assumed it would be the world, the normal world, and then this.
On some level, it is.
Yes, but we do have this pharmaceutical company, and everything that goes along. Again, I'm trying to avoid spoilers.
No, it's okay. I mean, I'm more open about it. Like I know you're being more cautious about it. Like I'm open to talking about stuff with it. It's like there's mentions of like that David Fincher made a Fight Club 2 and then retired instead of doing all the other movies that he actually did in our world. Like it goes and like there's different bands are popular, like different musical groups and stuff are popular in this universe. Like Charlton Heston was the Secretary of Defense at one point in this universe. Like it's different stuff. Some stuff is similar, other stuff is different, but they clearly got it's enough to generate a sense of unease, but in a way that people kind of can enjoy it. I think a little bit is where I was going with that, so that it's enough that you feel familiar with it and can kind of have a couple laughs, but then also realize that that means you're not really in safe territory as far as what to expect.
All right. Well, again, going back to comic books, I love that alternate history kind of stuff and those little things that you can do. Still a huge fan of like What If from Marvel or DC's Elseworlds, which are a little different, but yeah, those little changes when you see things like, oh, David Fincher did this and then didn't make any of these other things is a lot of fun for me.
Yeah.
Um, excuse me. This weather.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I'm gonna be a little basic here. I've never actually asked anyone this question, uh, so I'm curious. Which is basically why I just do this show. I just want to ask people the questions I have. But what was your journey to becoming a published author? If that's not too broad a question.
No, I understand. I mean, I've been writing since I was like 7 or 8. Um, and I was first published, I think I was 32 or 33. And I can't remember what year, I can't remember what ages correspond with what years anymore because this pandemic's been going on for so long. Um, but yeah, it was either that. So like, over 20 years that I was writing without being published, just, learning and growing and giving up sometimes, and then getting back onto it and getting depressed and coming out of it. And, um, but yeah, at a certain point, I was starting to kind of get my life back together a little bit. And, I had not been writing for a long time. And then I kind of just once I think the spring of 2018, I was just like, I kind of feel like writing again. So I started writing short stories, and instead of just keeping them to myself, I started submitting them to places. And one thing that really helped me was I wish I could remember who it was online who had said she had a rejection quota. And that meant she had to hit a certain number of rejections each year, which kept her submitting because she was like, well, I can't give up. I haven't hit my rejection quota yet. And honestly, that helped because each point where I again felt like stopping, I just was like, well, I haven't hit my quota. And eventually I started, selling stories. And so um, my first few stories came out in like the final quarter of 2018. And then it's just been selling more stories and writing books since then.
Well, looking at your bibliography on your webpage, it's tons and tons of short stories.
Yeah,
Um,
it's over 70 published now, I think.
that is pretty nice. Pretty nice. And one of them, as I was going through some of the anthologies and things that you're in, were already on my Amazon wish list, which I just put together to remind me of what I want to get.
I do that
But I
too.
added, um, and I may have this wrong. It's 3M's, I believe. Is it Movies, Monsters, and Mayhem, or
Monsters, Movies, and Mayhem.
Monster Movies and Mayhem? Yeah, I loved the title. Looked it up on Amazon. Added that to my wish list. Definitely want to pick that one up.
There's a lot of that's like amazing authors on that TOC.
Yeah,
I know
it
Jonathan
looked.
Mayberry's on there. Fran Wild, I think. Yeah, a lot of people like just yeah.
Yeah, it looked like a great list of authors. Um, and then let's see. I also saw. Is it Lost Contact?
Yeah, that one just came out from Perpetual Motion Machine Publishing, and that has the prequel to Queen of Teeth in it.
Oh, okay. Well, then I'll definitely. Well, I mean, I was going to get the 3 books in that series anyway.
I've been
Uh,
seeing people just grab the set.
yeah, well, Perpetual Motion Machine is one of my favorite small press publishers.
Oh, they're awesome.
I just subscribed to their new Ghoulish line. But yeah, the what, lost signals, lost contact, lost transmissions,
I'm not
something,
sure.
whatever those three are. Um, and then of course we have Benny Rose. How did you end up with doing something for Unnerving?
Um, let's see. So Benny Rose had been a concept for probably a year and a half before the Rewinder call came up, but I was stuck with it. Like I didn't know what to do. I was it was a bit of a mess in my head. I couldn't figure out how to make it work. And then the Rewind or Die call came up where Eddie Generous was saying he wanted pitches for this kind of retro or throwback series to more like kind of the stuff you'd see if you went into a video store and there'd be all this like, indie horror stuff that you didn't know what it was. It was just like all these awesome covers that just so much potential just on all the shelves. And just they kind of wanted to capture the excitement of that with these books. And once that, and I remember he wanted pitches from women first. Which got him a bit of flack for whatever freaking reason. Um, but yeah, so for whatever reason, once I saw the call, uh, like it wasn't like I kind of had this idea then set Benny Rose in the 80s, and that didn't solve all the problems I had, but it kind of started the chain reaction to figuring out everything else that wasn't working in the story. So I send him a pitch. He said it sounded good, write it, and I wrote it the next month.
Nice, very nice. I enjoyed it. One of the things I like about the Rewind or Die is that throwback feel, and even the stories that are set present day still feel like 80s stories.
Yeah. Yeah,
Uh,
I felt that too when I'm reading them.
I keep showing this off to people, but I actually have a little notebook here, and I have, let's see, find the page. This isn't going to be very clear, I don't think, but I have a list of all of the Rewind or Die books. And every time I order something from Amazon, I just add the next one
Oh.
from the list. So I have 22 of them so far. Technically, the first 21 and then number 23, which is Soul Survivor 2, which I ordered out of order because I'd already read. Soul Survivor was actually the first one that I read. But yeah, great series, and Benny Rose was very, very good.
Thanks. Yeah, I
All
love
right,
Rewind or Die.
what's that?
Yeah, I love Rewind or Die. It's a lot of fun.
All right. So one more thing before we kind of move on to the main event. You have a story in here. Firstly, Plants Grindhouse, another one of my favorite small press publishers. And if I'm not mistaken, your story is one that is being adapted. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Um, so they're making a film with, is it 3 of the stories?
4.
4?
Deep in the Heart, You've Been Saved, and I am blanking on the other. I think the Family Vacation.
I should have looked it up ahead of time. There's too many for me to name and remember which one it is. So did you or do you have any involvement in the making of your part of that film?
No, I feel bad every time I get asked that question because I think people want some details of the making of the movie, and I'm on the sidelines with everyone else. Like, I just, I signed the rights. I trust them to do well with Unkindly Girls, and I'm excited to see it when it's done. Like everyone else, I'm watching the behind the scenes stuff that's on YouTube, not on YouTube, Instagram for some of the others, like really neat stuff for like Deep in the Heart. and You've Been Saved. I think they're still filming the Family Vacation one, and I think Unkindly Girls will be last.
I'm trying to remember. I remember when all this was announced, and I even remember they did some like conference call, YouTube or Facebook, maybe live kind of things. I'm trying to remember if it was announced before the pandemic or if it came together during all the craziness, which of course has an effect on how things are done nowadays. Do you remember?
Yeah, well, the book didn't come out until after the pandemic had begun. So they would have had to do it during the pandemic.
I felt like I'd had this book longer than that.
It came out in July 2020, I believe.
Yeah. All right. Well, what do you know? Okay. All right. Well, since we do have some limited time tonight, we're gonna jump into the main event after my fake ad. I'd like to do. I don't have any sponsors for this, but I would love it if someone would care to sponsor me. So I do these fake little ads. I try to find something that connects to what we're going to be talking about. I wanted to do Exorcist Falls by Jonathan Jans, but it seems to be out of print. I think the audiobook is available, but I saw that you can't get except secondhand the book. So I changed tacts, and so this episode of My Favorite Horror With is not sponsored by The Devil and Philosophy. The Nature of His Game is the subtitle. This is from Open Court Press. It's part of their pop culture and philosophy series, which is a series that I love, at least the books they have on subjects that interest me. But this takes a look at evil and the devil in different permutations. What I like about the series, the pop culture and philosophy series, is they take a look at their subject using pop culture, or they'll use the subject to analyze that pop culture. So it goes kind of both ways. So you've got all these discussions on evil and Satan using movies, music, books, and what is Satan? Did we create Satan? Can there be God without Satan? There is one specific possession essay in here. So this is our non-sponsor for this episode, The Devil and Philosophy. There we go. With that out of the way, let's get to the main event. So your pick for My Favorite Horror With was The Exorcist III.
Yes.
So first, can you quickly tell us what this movie is about?
Oh, I don't know if I can quickly. It's a
Yeah.
it's a complicated movie.
Very complicated.
Takes place 15 years after The Exorcist. Lieutenant William Kinderman is investigating a series of murders that are occurring in the, I guess, DC or
And
Richmond
Georgetown.
area. Yeah, around there. It all mixes together when you live down here. But that and it feels like it feels up until a point like it's completely disconnected from The Exorcist, except there may be something occult going on. But he, was involved in the first Exorcist movie and book. And he's friends with Father Dyer, who I guess also was involved. There's a little bit of retconning here and
Yes.
there.
And the recasting doesn't help.
Yeah. But yeah, so I mean that's essentially, but it does eventually start to tie into what happened at the end of the first Exorcist. I guess that's the quickest way to sum it up. It's really like sanding off a lot of the details,
Yes.
though.
Well, we're going to get into all those details, and I forgot to say, folks, there are going to be spoilers. We're going to dig into this. So if you have not seen The Exorcist 3, pause this video, go watch the movie, and then you can come back and see us discuss this.
Yeah, it's on Shudder right now.
Yeah, that's where I watched it. And then again, before we get deep into it, can you why was this your choice?
I just picked a movie that I really enjoy. It's honestly an easy movie to sit down and watch for me. I really like it. And even though I've seen it a bunch of times, it's still tense. It's still really tense. I still dread getting to certain parts of it. Um, I like, and my wife does too. Like we were rewatching it last night and we got to the end of the big climax, and she just let out like this big sigh, even though she's seen the movie a couple times before too, and it's just like it still grabs you even after you've seen it a bunch. And it's just a nice, honestly, it has a lot going for it. It's very detailed. I love and you don't see this as much with movies. And I don't want to be that person who's like, it used to be better back in the day. But I do enjoy that the cluttered, real scenes, like the sets are just very
Mhm.
busy. There's just a lot of little details. There's a lot of snappy dialogue. Makes you like the characters a lot and then feel terrible for them as things continue. Um, the performances are fantastic, honestly, from start to finish. Yeah, it's just honestly, I could just which we will get into details, but I could just go on and on. I just think it's a fantastic movie.
I watched it for the first time ever today. It's one of those movies that's always been on my radar. People talk about it all the time. I have seen right now we'll just call it the hallway scene.
Yeah,
I
that
have
one's
seen
pretty
that.
famous.
But as you say, I was still tense while I was watching it because I knew what was coming, but not exactly when.
Yeah,
And so I'm
and that hallway scene is just one of the best jump scares ever, in my opinion.
it's fantastic. And yeah, the interplay between the characters, the relationship between Kinderman and Father Dyer, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Um, I really like, especially when kind of jumping ahead when Kinderman first goes to see Dyer at the hospital. Just the back and forth between the two of them, I thought
Yes.
was great fun.
It
I,
it
I
yeah.
I have not seen The Exorcist in a long time, so I don't know if you can answer this question or if there is an answer to this question. Is there mention of a Gemini killer in the original?
No.
Okay, so that's, com- I thought it could have been like a throwaway line, like Kinderman being a cop could have mentioned it, but
I
apparently
mean,
not.
well, the thing is at that point, like I mean, just to throw the movies a bone, at that point, the um the Gemini killer is like has already been convicted and is on death row. So there really isn't any involvement really with Kinderman. But in the book, um, events take place differently. The Gemini killer actually dies on the other side of the country in California. I believe he's on this Golden Gate Bridge. I could be remembering wrong, but and he dies because he gets gunned down by police.
Okay, that's interesting.
So there was in the book there was a bit more reason why there would not be any mention of the Gemini killer. I do like that the movie brought it to be more local though, because I think it made more sense for Kinderman to have information about the case.
Right. Um, so it starts with, I think the first scene the rowing team. I
The
don't know.
first scene's the rowing team, and then it cuts to some kind of trippy stuff with like a dream, and like we hear some dialogue and like the wind blows into the church and then the Christ statue's
That's right.
eyes
Yeah.
open and
Eyes
widen.
pop open.
Yeah, and then we cut back to the Potomac and the discovery of the first murder.
Yes. Um, yeah, it's an interesting opening. It's a very has a for me it had a bit of a noir feel,
Mm.
and it just seems like this bizarre murder mystery at first. Of course, it's called The Exorcist. We know it's going to have some craziness to it. But of course, I've been reading up on the trivia. And I already knew that, like, William Blatty, right? William Peter Blatty. Make
Yeah,
sure my name's right. Didn't want it called that. Wanted it called Legion,
would like the book. Yeah.
like the book, which would make sense, I think. And of course, apparently the studio forced him to put the exorcism in at the end.
It's funny because they made him change the title, and then because it was called The Exorcist, they were like, well, it has to have an exorcism. It's called The Exorcist, where it's like, you guys made it be called that. But I'll be honest, although I haven't watched the alternative, like I haven't watched the alternative version of the movie, which is the original. Brad Dourif is the only one playing Father Karras, the Gemini killer. They're not switching back and forth between him
Right.
and Jason Miller. I have watched the ending, the original ending. I honestly think the exorcism scene is better. Um, I
Interesting.
think I think the producers were right because I don't know if I can just jump ahead here.
Yeah, we're doing whatever we want.
Just because it's an alternative ending, I figure it's okay to just say there's no climax. He just walks in and shoots him. It's
I
kind of
would
dull.
love, I'd like to see the alternate ending. One of the things it talked about in some of the things I looked up was that in one ending, and I don't know if it made it to, I don't know if they said it was in the book or made it to screenplay stage, where the Gemini killer dies because his father dies.
Yes,
That they said
I
he
believe
was
that's the
doing
book.
all of the. What's that?
I believe that's the book.
Okay.
Because I remember in the, not to spoil the book, I guess also, but like
Yeah.
before the point where, at the point where the the possessed woman gets to Kinderman's house, it kind of just falls apart on its own because his soul leaves because yeah, his father passed. If I'm remembering correctly, I've only read the book once.
It is a book. I have never read either one. I do have, unfortunately, these huge gaps in my reading and watching of things.
The book is the book's plot is very similar, but its storytelling is very, very different. It's much more a lot of it is in Kinderman's head, and it's very much about like these questions about the universe and faith and such, which I think comes through a bit in the movie, but obviously you're not going to have this long like internal narration in the movie. But I really like the book too. I think it's an excellent book, but it's very, very different feel to it.
That's perfectly fine with me. Um, so we do, yeah, we've been jumping around, but we have the first murder. We meet Kinderman, and we meet Dyer around this point as well. Um, and I like that when Dyer is, I don't know if he's having breakfast or what he's doing with the other priest or
Yeah.
whomever that gentleman is, and he says, I'm going to see It's a Wonderful Life. I'm taking my friend Kinderman. He gets depressed around this time, and I have to cheer him up. And the Kinderman has gone home to his family and tells them, "Yeah, I'm going out. I have to cheer up Father Dyer."
I think their relationship, their friendship is adorable.
It's wonderful. And then they go to lunch after the movie. I think it's after the movie.
Yes.
Um, and yeah, the just the interplay between the two of them, I really enjoyed. And apparently, Larry King and somebody else, C. Everett Koop, are in that scene at
I'm
the
not sure.
luncheonette.
I'm always paying attention to what they're doing, Kinderman and Dyer. Like they have such a rhythm to the two of them that I just enjoy so much. I get completely engrossed in what they're doing. So I keep seeing Larry King in the credits as himself, but I never see him in the movie itself. I've never like caught him on screen for whatever reason.
I didn't notice it. I just know it from looking at things online. I did notice in the dream sequence Fabio
Yeah.
and Samuel L. Jackson.
I didn't see Samuel L. Jackson.
It's very quick. He's the blind man. I think it's
Really?
right
Oh,
after we've passed Fabio and the other whoever the other angel is that's with Fabio. And there's a blind man sitting there that says
there's a
something.
lot going on in that
Yeah, there
scene, to be
that is
fair.
crazy. It might be the craziest scene in the movie,
Mm.
which is saying something.
It's I love the concept because it's this interesting kind of like it's not the afterlife, it's not a dream, but it does like if you have just died and if you're dreaming or if you're apparently if you're talking on the radio, like this stuff all crosses this kind of like I don't know, like this spiritual grand central kind of place. It's so interesting.
Um, excuse me. And of course, unfortunately, that dream is a bit prophetic.
Right.
But we've sort of jumped ahead again. Um, that's on me. So we get the confessional scene. Um, Now I felt right off the bat. So we have this priest in the confessional. We don't see who's come in the other side. We just hear a voice.
And yeah, it's all dark. It's
And I felt right off the bat that that voice was off. I was like, this is not a normal person.
right,
It's supposed to sound like a little old lady,
but
but
it's wrong.
to me it sounded like someone trying to sound like a little old lady.
Right.
Um, and then of course that
Probably
presents.
Brad Dourif.
Yes, yes, the wonder. He is so good in this.
He is. He really is.
So fantastic. But that priest ends up dead, and we get the when Kinderman's looking at the body, we don't know yet the significance, but he looks at both hands,
Right.
and we see the one hand, and that there's a missing finger. We don't see the other hand. We see him just walk around to the other side, lift up the sheet.
Yeah, and we don't know why it matters until like probably halfway through the movie or later.
Yeah, it's quite a while. Um, and then he goes to visit Dyer. Dyer's in the hospital. Do they ever say what? I mean, he just says he's there for checkups.
Right. It's just tests. He's just
Yeah,
got a cough and stuff. So it's just he's an old man. I mean, it's, it happens.
yeah. But there again, their dialogue so much fun.
Right.
Um, and then at some point we have the dream, and in the dream we see people with their heads sewn back on.
Right. Like Thomas Kintry, the first victim, he
Mhm.
walks up to Kinderman and, they have a little exchange and then he sees Father Dyer and he turns around and he's got the same black stitching. And it's so much dread in that scene because we get it
Yes.
pretty much right away. We understand because there's already been 2 decapitations in this movie. And Kinderman says, like, I wonder if we're having the same dream. And Father Dyer says, I'm not dreaming, Bill. And then, ugh, and he
And
wakes
then
up and it's so terrible.
the
Ugh.
phone rings. Yeah, and he goes to the hospital. Um, and unfortunately, Father Dyer is dead.
And
And
it's so brilliant storytelling wise because they make you fall in love with the friendship of these characters. And then we're like 30% of the way through the movie, and then they take it away
yes,
by having this character die. And it's just we feel the loss too, just like Kinderman does, because we don't have that anymore.
exactly. And they do it so well. They build that relationship so well so quickly.
Yeah.
Um, but then we get some freaky stuff. The, I noticed the cart with all the little vials on it, the little container.
Yeah.
And at first I was like, why is there a cart of Jello next to his bed? But Kinderman has to ask, and they tell him that's his blood. Someone filled these little containers, almost like urine sample jars,
Yeah.
filled them with his blood without spilling a drop, and then, but did use some to write on the wall. I mean, we're just getting creepier and creepier,
Right.
I think. And then like I recognized a lot of people. What the hell did I just do? I just lost something. I'm on IMDb so I can look at the cast. Of course, Brad Dourif. Um, well, Dr. Temple. It drove me crazy the entire movie. I'm like, I know this actor. Who is it? Well, Scott Wilson. Um, which most people nowadays maybe know from The Walking Dead.
Hmm.
Um, but uh, Grand L. Bush, who was Sergeant Atkins, I knew immediately. I see that guy, and he's from the movie Streets of Fire. Have you ever seen that movie?
I have not.
He's also in Die Hard, which I just happened to see on New Year's Eve. But
Just watched that, but I didn't remember him in it.
the do you remember the two FBI agents, Johnson and Johnson?
Oh yeah, yes, yep.
Yeah.
Okay, now I know what you're talking about.
And he's part of a Streets of Fire. They call it a rock and roll fable. He's part of a singing group in that movie. It's back when I was young and we had HBO. There were movies that I would just watch every single time they were on, and that was one of them. So I recognized him. I recognized the nurse that calls herself a bitch. She's like, "No, I'm a bitch."
Yeah, Allerman.
Yep. And so yeah, bunch of people that I recognized. Um, the hospital. I assume he's an administrator that's yelling about what Kinderman is
Yeah,
doing. And again, one of my favorite scenes because when Kinderman finally just tells him to shut up and breaks down,
yeah.
wonderfully played.
And George C. Scott is so good at like those emotional moments. Like that's this and the Changeling. Um, yeah, he just really just goes all out, and it's amazing.
And I'm so used to thinking of him as just like a really stern character, a really stern actor. But in this, we have those fun moments when he's bantering with Dyer, and when he's talking about how his mother-in-law is at the house and the stupid fish is in the bathtub,
Oh, the carp monologue is so amazing.
and then when he breaks down, it's I'm personally not used to seeing that sort of thing from him. Not that I've seen everything in his filmography, but great performance from him.
Yeah.
Um, what I'm sure I've skipped too many things.
I
He
mean, there's a lot of interrogating. Like he talks to Mrs. Clelia. He talks to different people in the ward. At the point you're talking about, he explains the reason the hands are important, like that they fed misinformation to the press to weed out people who were claiming to be the Gemini killer who weren't, as far as where the Gemini symbol was carved and which finger was cut off from which hand, and that these killings match the true MO of the Gemini killer as opposed to the fake stuff. And there's
right,
no way that just some random person could know that.
exactly. There is the scene where he's at a church, I assume it is, talking to again, I assume a priest
I
as
think
opposed
he's
to
a
like
deacon or
Monsignor. I don't know,
something. I'm not sure.
but and trying to come up with a connection between the three murders that they've had so far. And this is when this person he's talking to says, "Well, it could have been that exorcism 15 years ago."
Yeah.
So we tie in that way, and we get is
It's a
this our
great
first?
moment for the audience because that's the point where they figure out something that we already know, kind of.
Is this the first mention of Father Karras? Do you remember?
No, he's mentioned at the beginning of the movie because when we get the rowing scene, actually, now that you've mentioned that, um,
Oh,
Kinderman looks at a photo of him and Father Karras.
and when Dyer is
Yeah, talking to that one younger
talking to that
priest.
younger guy,
Yeah.
yeah, that's right. But some creepy stuff happens in this scene where the priest mentions it might be connected, and I, when Kinderman walks out because of these weird sounds and weird things that are happening, The lights are playing tricks. And the one statue, I don't know if it was intentional, because I've seen one place that I was looking at just said demonic face. It looked like the Joker to me.
It looked a little like that. Yeah, it had those angles to it.
And a lot of weird stuff with statues in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
With the Jesus eyes opening at the very beginning, and then the first murder, there was a statue's head where that kid's head should have been.
Yeah. And then there's Father Morning's crucifix starts bleeding from the eyes.
Mm-hmm. Excuse me. And then somewhere around here, when I just want to call him Herschel from The Walking Dead, Dr. Temple, I believe.
Yeah, Dr. Temple.
Yeah. When he's taking Kinderman around, they go into do they just call it the psych ward?
The disturbed ward.
Disturbed ward. And this is where we get our first glimpse. He's still completely in shadow. But our first glimpse, Patient X, as he is sometimes called. That's what they call him in the credits.
Yeah, but I don't think they refer to him as that in the movie in dialogue.
When it's Jason Miller in the credits, it says Patient X, and then when it's Brad Dourif, it says the Gemini Killer. But I think at this point, it's Jason Miller we're seeing the silhouette of. But we don't know who it is. We don't know anything yet. Yeah, so much going on here.
Yeah, until Temple starts and this is funny because it's hard to understand why this is happening, but like Temple is reading a note and he's like rehearsing it to himself before Kinderman comes in, and then he says like, hey, this guy says he's the Gemini Killer.
Yeah. I have to mention, one of the things I find funny when I watch movies from this time and earlier is like how much smoking is going on in a hospital. Yeah. Just Temple is smoking like crazy, walking around the hospital, walking into patients' rooms.
Right.
Just smoking like crazy. Yeah, so Temple, rehearses what he's going to say and chain smokes. They literally show him light one cigarette off the end of another. And tells him the Gemini Killer. We learn that this patient was brought in 15 years ago with amnesia and was catatonic for a long time, right?
Yeah, most of that time.
And then finally woke up and started causing trouble, I guess. They did electroshock. And we skipped over what possibly my favorite line, because it tickled me so much. When Kinderman goes and talks to the old woman, after he talks to the nurse who found Dyer's body, the whole between 5 and 6 thing, and he says, was there anybody in the hall? And she says, Mrs. So-and-so was passed out in the hall. And he goes to talk to her, and she wants to know if he's the radio repairman.
Right.
And when she says, and he says, yes, I'm the radio repairman. And she just, with her empty, she's like, can you fix my radio? Or can you see my radio? He's like, yeah, I see your radio. And she's like, I knew you weren't the radio repairman. This isn't a radio, it's a telephone. And of course, she's holding nothing.
Right.
Which I don't know why, I just found that so fun.
Yeah, there's a lot of humor in the movie, like more than you'd expect. And it really, I think it makes the horror, more intense. Like Absolutely. It's not a horror comedy. It's just very witty and, snappy movie, but it makes everybody more human. And then when the horror comes, you really feel it.
Yes. Excuse me. So if I'm skipping anything important, please.
No, I mean, you're hitting the important, like I've got a little outline here. You're hitting all the significant plot points.
Kinderman finally goes in to talk to Patient X, who now he's seeing Alex Karras, right?
or Damien Karras, yeah.
Damien, sorry. Yeah, I don't know why I said Alex. Yes, Damien, that's who he's seeing
Yeah,
because
and he's seeing Jason. The whole time he's seeing Jason Miller, like as you know, what we see as Jason Miller. No matter who's playing him, he's seeing that,
right.
and he kind of says to him like someone who believes would see the truth of this. So I guess that kind of gives us the benefit of the doubt that we are the believers who get to
Yes.
see that it's when like because it's not like at any point except for certain moments that it's ever Damien Karras, but it's more like the Gemini killer is kind of using Father Karras as kind of a I don't know, a mask, but he's
Yes.
still himself. But then when he has that big outburst when Kinderman says the Gemini killer is dead, and then he's like, "No, I am not. I am alive." That's when Brad Dourif pops out, and then he's the one shouting and screaming and spitting and stuff. And it's such an amazing contrast to every other conversation. All the other conversations in the movie are so different from when Brad Dourif is, monologuing to Kinderman at the couple scenes where that happens. And starting with that one, it just wakes you up.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. And again, his performance, I think, is just fantastic.
Oh, it really is.
And
Now, in the original cut, he plays the character through the whole thing. Jason Miller isn't in that cut at all.
yeah, I guess a couple different things I read about why.
Yeah, it's not pleasant, unfortunately.
But the simplest one was apparently in an interview, William Peter Blatty simply said he wasn't available. But I guess when they did reshoots, because they had to do the whole add the Exorcist ending and everything, or exorcism ending, they
Right.
were able to shoot some stuff with him. So you have both.
Right. I mean, they reshot a good chunk of the movie because the studio really wanted Jason Miller, and he would have completely replaced Brad Dourif, except his alcoholism was really taking a toll at that point, and so they ended up having to go back and forth between like kind of choose artistically scenes where they could get away with Jason Miller, and then ways that it would make sense to use Brad Dourif.
Yeah. Well, I think it worked the way they did it.
I think it worked too. I honestly, like, again, I haven't watched the second cut except for the ending, but I really think that the movie is stronger for the decisions they made overall. Yeah.
All right.
I wouldn't want to lose Brad Dourif from this movie, though. He's too excellent.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Keeping an eye on the clock. I want to make sure we don't go over time. So, what are the high points that you want to hit?
Well, definitely. I mean, we definitely like once you get to Brad Dourif, I think it's just like that is like even if somebody didn't like the rest of the movie, I think that they would still be impressed with those scenes, with him talking to Kinderman about his unbelief and such. And then it does build up into the climax because you have the whole thing where he kind of leads Kinderman on a wild goose chase as far as who he's going to possess and try to kill next, and then going after Kinderman's daughter with one of the women from the psychiatric ward, which then gets messed up because Father Morning shows up. But like I really love Kinderman's speech at the end where he's like, "Have you helped you with your unbelief?" And he's like, "I believe in murder. I believe in evil. I believe in slime and every crawling putrid thing. I believe in you." It's like, it's such a great speech.
It is, and again, so many strong performances in this movie.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I like the explanation for what's going on. That
Yeah.
and I've warned you people out there, we're going to be spoiling things. The fact that the Gemini killer was electrocuted. Excuse me. I guess. Well, I guess before Father Karras died.
Around the same time, he said he was floating in the void, and then his friends, like he didn't want to call them demons, said his work should continue, and then they pushed him into Father Karras as he was dying.
Yeah, so this is not a demonic possession. It's an evil person's soul possession,
Right,
I guess.
which is neat. But he has demons with him, because when Father Morning comes in, it's not the Gemini killer talking to Father Morning. It's a demon that apparently, it's implied that Father Morning had exorcised from someone in the Philippines.
Yes. Well, I was going to say, so this friend that put him in Father Karras, would that be Pazuzu?
I'm not sure. Like that was something I talked about with my wife last night, where we were just like, is this revenge on behalf of Pazuzu, or is it still Pazuzu? Like it's not answered.
Well, I thought that uh, the Gemini killer said basically that he was floating in the void, and his friend was, and I don't remember how he put it, or if I'm imagining it, that his friend had been torn out of Father Karras, and so that's why they were putting the Gemini killer in.
Right. But I don't know if the demon that was helping Father Carrot, the Gemini killer at the, excuse me, later on was
Okay.
also Pazuzu. And it's also like, it's not really like the movies ever make that clear. I mean, the whole Pazuzu thing, you kind of have to like start taking Exorcist 2 into account, which I choose not to do. Whereas in the first Exorcist movie, like the way, if you believe the demons, that there's multiple entities inside of Reagan. So and he even says like certain parties were expelled
Yes.
from a young girl, they were not pleased. So he also refers to multiple, and that kind of lends to the title Legion, but also to the fact that he is he's continuing to possess more people. He's just like, Father Karras is just his home base. He's jumping to catatonic people, and just like as if they're just kind of rooms for rent.
Right. We learned from the nurse that he has passed out.
Yeah.
And when Kinderman asks when, it lines up with the 3 murders that we've had so far.
Right.
So he's leaving that body and possessing, for some reason, the old people in the hospital. And I don't know, because that's easier for him, or
Because a lot of them are semi-catatonic, and when they go into a catatonic state, they're kind of like not using their bodies, so
empty
they're
dust.
available.
Um, yeah, so I really like that explanation of how it's all working. And yeah, we get a red herring. We think that uh, one of the things, all the people being killed, their name starts with K, first
Yeah.
or last name,
Or middle.
or middle. Yeah, in the one case, turns out to be middle. Um, so we very clearly see this kid being checked into the hospital
Right.
and asked, oh, how do you spell that? And they it's K something something something.
Right. Corner.
And then we get um, Kinderman realizes that the Gemini killer is out there going to kill someone, finds the nurse that's been stripped. Was she dead?
They didn't make it clear. I don't think so, because that would kind of like, I don't think that the Gemini killer would have wanted to waste killing somebody, because he calls himself an artist and stuff.
Yes.
So I think she was just knocked out.
So okay, so yeah, so we know this nurse has been stripped. We see another dark figure, nurse figure, going into this kid's room, and Kinderman runs in there, and it's just the bitchy nurse, um, bringing
Hallerman.
toys to the kid.
Yeah.
Oh, and that's another I love. He calls home. He grabs the phone. He calls home. We see the phone ring in his house. His wife answer it. Oh, honey, it's you. What's going on? Oh, you're blah blah blah. And then we cut back to him, and we just get that busy signal on
Right.
his end,
Right.
and you realize she's not talking to her husband.
Right.
Like,
Because
ooh, ooh, ooh.
yeah, because the Gemini killer made it clear he could do different voices.
Yeah, I loved that part. And then a nurse shows up. We have the crazy scene where
Yeah.
his mother-in-law saves the day.
Right. Like from the surgical shears, which I know those don't exist, but they're still nightmarish.
Oh yeah. That should be up there with like the best horror movie killing implements.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um
Like just the sound they make when they close, it just sends a chill down your spine.
oh, and the idea that you're using your strength to open them and the spring is what snaps them shut.
Right.
So that
Ugh,
force of it. Oh.
yeah.
Um okay, so yeah, so Gemini Killer has sent someone to kill Kinderman's daughter, but she is saved. This old lady that's being possessed is beating the crap out of everybody.
Right.
But then the father, what's his name?
Father Morning.
Yes, Father Morning shows up, basically interrupts because he's in the cell with the Gemini Killer
Right,
to
because he's the
perform an
hospital's
exorcism.
chaplain, I believe.
Yeah, and then things don't go well for him.
No, but he helps save the day in the end. I don't know if he survives what happened, but
And yeah, so he's ooh, one of
yeah, it
the
was ugh.
more graphic parts, I think, when he's up on the ceiling and sort of peeling away from the
There's a
ceiling.
lot of striking imagery through that whole exorcism scene.
Absolutely. Then Kinderman comes in. He has that great speech monologue, as you said. We have this again, a weird thing where the floor opens up and these figures rise up out of it.
Yeah.
But then, with the help of Father Morning, who has fallen from he was stuck on the ceiling, falls from the ceiling, but he's able to grab his crucifix, which weakens the Gemini Killer.
It's him doing that plus them kind of calling out to Father Karras, and he kind of like tears the attention away.
Yeah,
Kinderman falls to the ground, then like that's that moment where he's just like, do it now, Bill, kill me
yep,
now. And it's just ugh.
yeah,
Like there's so much emotion even in that, even as something as bombastic as that.
yeah, yeah. But so Father Karras kind of gains control for just long enough that Kinderman can shoot him.
Yeah.
And that's it. Basically, there's a scene at the end, I think, or is that
Where they're
Dyer's?
reburying his body. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, we're closing up on our time here. Any last words, last thoughts on the film?
Probably one that will piss off some people, but I think this is better than The Exorcist.
Okay. I have not seen The Exorcist in a long, long time, so I'm not able to make a comparison because
I
this
don't even
was
usually make comparisons either, but like we did watch like a couple years ago we watched The Exorcist, and then that was when I showed my wife this one for the first time, and I was just like, this is better. I was just like, I just felt like it was a stronger movie. I feel like I don't want to insult The Exorcist. It is a classic, but I really think not enough people watch The Exorcist 3 comparatively, and I do think it's just overall a stronger film.
I have seen it on well, quite a few top 10 favorite horror lists.
That's
I know
good.
that I know there are people that love this one.
Oh yeah,
It is
it's got its fans. It has, but people talk about The Exorcist,
right.
and I think some of that reputation ends up hurting The Exorcist too, or The Exorcist as well. I don't care about The Exorcist too.
Yes.
Um, but because you'll have people watch it nowadays who are younger and they'll be like, well, that isn't scary. It's like, well, the movie's almost 50 years old. It's hard for it to still be scary, considering how things have changed over time. But I feel like a lot of scenes in the first Exorcist kind of draw their strength from some of the shock of them at the time. And so I can totally understand why it was so terrifying when it came out and for a long time after. But I think when you strip away some of that shock, there's not as much there as there is in Exorcist 3. Whereas Exorcist 3, I don't think is very shocking aside from one or two scenes, but I do think like the performances, the characters, the themes are very strong, and they withstand the test of time comparatively. At least to me. I don't want to insult anyone who loves The Exorcist. To me, I think The Exorcist 3 is a better movie.
I can see that. I do have a question real quick. Since we're talking about these movies with religious themes, not that long ago, I don't think, on Twitter, there was somebody I think it was on Twitter, that said they don't believe that a non-religious person can find religious horror scary. I completely disagree with that.
I disagree as well.
Okay, well, that's basically answers my question. My reaction was, well, then no horror is scary except like serial killer horror, because I
Right.
don't believe in werewolves or vampires or zombies or any of this other stuff.
Right.
I'm an atheist and I love religious horror.
Yeah, I think that's right up there with that whatever tweet it was that was like horror can't take place in space.
Yes. Yeah.
It's the same kind of anytime you say like an absolute like that, you're automatically wrong because it's just, well, that's an absolute too, but whatever. It's I just, you can't, I think it's very hard to write an entirety of something off like that. And
Right.
but also horror isn't really about that. It's not about whether you believe in it or not in general in your life. It's a matter of whether you believe in it while you're reading it or watching it. And that's a matter of atmosphere and emotion and character and your investment in what's going on. It has nothing to do I mean, I'm not a Christian, but like I can watch The Last Exorcism or Exorcist 3, a bunch of this stuff, and still be completely engaged because in the world of this movie, that is what's real.
Right. Okay. All right. So is there anything you want to plug?
Sure. Now that I've mentioned like the horror and space stuff, I have a space horror novella coming out in spring. Your Mind is a Terrible Thing, from the Off Limits Press, who published The Worm and His Kings.
Nice.
And later this year, I think in October, I have a horror / noir / mystery / dark fantasy novel, No Gods for Drowning. That'll be coming out from Polis Books.
Nice.
And then I have a bunch of short stories in anthologies and all kinds of stuff, but yeah.
I'm looking forward to all of that. And if you care to share, where can people find you online?
I'm at www.haileypiper.com, and on Twitter, I'm at Hailey Piper Says.
All right. I'll have links for that stuff in the description below this video. If you can just hang out for a minute, I'll do my outro, which is essentially just saying thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for having me on.
And then folks out there, yeah, excuse me, folks out there, if you have any comments or questions, put them in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe. You know all the YouTube things. That's it for this episode. That's just for everything for now, I guess. All right, I lost track of what I was saying. Until next time, folks, read more books.